Alright, let's come back to continue the last part of chapter 1 now on stakeholder. Why suddenly we cover stakeholder on this part? I'm sure that all of you know what is stakeholder. What is the difference between shareholder and stakeholder? Remember, shareholder is those people invest in the company, and what they need to do is actually do nothing, just invest the money in, and after that, at the end of the day, they will receive the returns, the rewards from what the company generate. So this is shareholder, but stakeholder is referred to any of the entity, all the entity, as long as they are interested with the company. For example, employee, for example, those worker, or even like, for example, supplier, creditor, banker, the customer, the public. So any of the entity, as long as they are interested with the company, they can be the company stakeholder. And why suddenly we need to cover the stakeholder concept here? It's actually because the previous topic, what we discussed, different entity here, different parties here, we are interested with the company is because of we want to aim for our personal interest. It's just like, for example, a worker. A worker normally, why you're so interested with the company, whether the company is doing well or doing bad, main reason, we want to know whether our salary, whether every year we got any increments or not, whether we have any bonus or not for this year. And let's say, for example, a customer, why the customer interested with the company, whether the company is doing well or not? Because we want to know whether the company is running in the ethical way or not. Because remember, for customer, they are the one to use the company product or they engage with the company services. So they want to know that whether whatever they pay for is really value for money. They don't want to just pay for something which is not deserved for this value. So what I'm trying to show you here is different entity, different parties here. Actually, they are trying to show the different kind of interest towards the same organizations. But the problem now is we are facing with something. Since we have to manage with so many entities, and we cannot be just ignore them because some of them maybe the power is really very big. The power is really significant to us because whatever they decide at the end of the day will influence us a lot, especially the company futures. So we cannot take it easy, just ignore them. No, cannot. It's just like, for example, a group of customer. If they are not happy with whatever we provide for them, can you imagine what will be the consequence? If this is just a single customer only, just one only, then still okay. But imagine if this is a group of customer, they can be united together and try to boycott us. So that's why this is not easy to handle. So let's move on to the next portion now. That's why we have to cover this managing on stakeholder, how we manage them well. So in future, as a director, our focus point cannot be always focused in shareholder only. We still have the rest of the party, which we should take care of their benefit also. But definitely, if you ask me frankly, honestly speaking, can we make everyone happy? Impossible. I always tell my students, only one person in this world can make everyone happy, which is ice cream seller. But we are not ice cream seller here. So how can we make everyone happy? That's why, to be honest, what we can do is we need to try our best to satisfy certain group of people and give the priority for certain group of people. It all depends on their power and the interest towards the organizations. That's why the next topic, what we are going to cover now is called Mendeley matrix. Why we call this as Mendeley matrix? Because the author, the person to create this model here, called Mendeley, is the author name. And this is look like a matrix here. That's why we call this as, normally in short, we call this as Mendeley matrix. Or some of the reference book, they will mention that this is Mendeley stakeholder mapping. Can also lah. Actually, no need to argue on the name of the models. Anything you call it, how you call it is okay. Most important, you have to know how to play with this model well, as this is an important topic. Very, very important for your coming exam, your examiner favorite topic. So put a big, big star here. I think from the past history, every interval of 1 or 2 exam sitting, your examiner will keep testing you on this model. Normally, it's either roughly N marks, 10 marks, or can be 50 marks. Depends on how your examiner tests you. But normally this matrix here, this model here, my student favorites, so my student love it so much. Normally, if your examiner really tests you on this part, my student normally, they don't have any issue with this one. They love it. So how to look at this matrix here? The first thing I'll show you on how to look at this matrix here. This matrix is very easy to remember. Remember, you need to look at two things. So we want to give because what we are trying to do now is by you looking at this matrix, right, we can know that actually is that we want to classify this group of people. Should we give the priority for them? Should we care about them? So all depends on the influence. The influence in simple means that their power and the interests towards our organizations. Then from there, we can decide, see whether they are under which category. And from there, we know we should give them the priority, we should give them the focus, or we just can ignore them. So let's say, for example, if you found that this group of stakeholder, right, this stakeholder is actually considered as high power. So high power means that it's under this quadrant, high power. Then the interest to this organization, their interest towards the organization is also considered as high. So in simple means that from these two, right, you are under this quadrant here, number one here. So in simple means that this group of stakeholder, we have to manage them closely. Why? In simple means that we have to make sure that we keep them properly. We have to always maintain a good relationship with them. They are very, very important. They are super important to us. So one of the good example, don't talk about organizations now, don't talk about like, for example, in the business world now, we talk about in a family. Who is the one is with the high power and is with the high interest to you? I'm sure that you are going to tell me that for sure, of course, my parents. That's why this is the reason we need to manage them properly. We need to manage them closely. Whatever they request, we need to fulfill. Because of high power, remember, you don't want your next month's pocket money being cut by half, right? That's why the power is very high, right? So what you need to do to your parents, your daddy, your mommy, is always follow their instructions and is always keep them happy, make them happy. Am I right? That's why we have to manage them closely. So remember, manage them closely in simple means that we have to think of the way to satisfy them. And we need to always give them the priority. And the next one, let's try another one. What if you found that someone, the power is very high, okay? But actually the interest towards you is actually very low only, not really high. So one of the good example is, for example, we talk about government. Normally for governments, the power is very high because they can impose the rule, the regulation towards all the organizations. But if you really ask like whether government really concerns on how well the organization is doing, how the organization is performing, do you think that they're really concerned about you? No, right? That's why government is considered as this quadrant here, number 2 here. This is the second. The power is high, but the interest is low to you. They are not really interested with you. They will only look at you the moment when they want to know that whether you comply or not. So in this case here, for this group of stakeholders, right, how we are going to treat them? Normally, are you going to make them happy always? Or are you going to give them the priority, full priority? The answer is, I won't give them the priority, but I will try to keep them happy only. Because can you imagine if you make them not happy, if you make them feel sad to you, what is going to happen? That's why you can see this quadrant here is like this group of people normally is like considered as keep satisfied. Since they are not interested to us already, then why we need to still keep them satisfied? Simple, because the power is high. They still can do a lot of things towards you. So in order to avoid to fall under the trap, we need to make them happy. You can see for the next two quadrant here, if the power is low, if any of the entity, the power is low to you, then the interest is high, then you will be under this quadrant. Keep informed. Keep informed in simple means that since the power is low, they can't do anything towards you, but it's just like they are very interested with you. So what you can do is just keep them informed. No need to give them the priority, no need to satisfy them well, but what we can do is maybe we just share whatever we want to share. No need to be like so serious on it. So for example, who is under keep informed? For example, your boyfriend or your girlfriends. You know that they are still not your spouse yet, remember? So the power is still very low. Remember, they cannot control a lot. So we just need to keep them informed on whatever we do. Even you forgot to inform them, it's okay. Okay, so you keep this part for the video for yourself. No need to share with your boyfriend or girlfriends. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble, okay? Hey. So now let's move on to the next portions, which is on monitor. So monitor here, this monitor is actually on people with low power and at the same time, people with low interests. That's why we just classify them as monitor. Because this group of people normally, you know that since the power is low and then they are not really interested with you also. So why you need to put them as priority? That's why not worth for you to spend the time with them. What you need to do is just classify them as monitor. Enough already. Sufficient already. But I remember there's one student asked me before for these questions. Is it possible that this group of people currently is under monitoring this quorum, and suddenly maybe 3 months later, 4 months later, 5 months later, this group of stakeholder will keep satisfied or keep informed and slowly eventually become managed closely? Means that very, very super important. Is it possible like this? Yes, possible. Because from time to time, you know that situation will change. You get what I mean? So it's possible to move from one quadrant to another from time to time. That's why you cannot be just like analyze once and then apply this concept forever. No, cannot. So we need to check from time to time, see whether we should certify them, give them the priority. The decisions here is still the same or not as compared to before, whatever we decide. Alright, so I hope you understand on the whole things here. Then if you can understand for this part, suppose should be no issue for you. So your homework now is supposed to be these questions, a brain break question, but this question is super easy. It's just a multiple choice questions. You try to do it and then we can discuss in your coming live sessions. After this, try with second question. Second question here is a bit it's a bit longer. So what you need to do is you have to follow exactly the requirement here. Based on this 4 entity here, and then based on the whole story here, you have to decide on we should just keep them informed or just monitor or try to keep them satisfied under Mandela matrix. And remember what I mentioned just now, for these situations, maybe this director currently is under monitor closely. But maybe slowly, like if you change this director here to another question, maybe this group of director can become like just keep informed or keep satisfied. So you don't have the fixed rule that board of director in these questions here is like, let's say it's like under managed closely. And if you move on to another question, right, board of director can become another quadrant. So it's not necessary must be always managed closely. We have to look at what is the situations and we have to look at what is the case study. So remember, you have to run through the whole case study here, the readings here, before you decide which quadrant suppose you need to go. So this one, I will leave it for you as your homework as well. And move on to the last portions here is on how you align the interests according to the company objective and according to each of the agent objective, the personal preference. So this portion here is nothing much. This portion here is like trying to tell us that, because just now remember the car example, the car 4 tires example, what I give you just now in the first video, how to make the 4 tires work towards the same directions. So this is very important. So we have to make sure that, because the decision making can be so different to everyone. But most important, remember, no matter what kind of decisions we go, we have to promote for goal concurrence. So what do you mean by goal concurrence? This one is like in simple, means common goal. No matter what we decide, how we go for it, we have to make sure that we have to ensure that everyone's works towards the same directions. So we call this as common goal. And a proper name in management accounting jargon, we call this as goal concurrence. And the next portion here will be on, since we talked about corporate governance just now, we are talking on normally for corporate governance, how we make it as a habit or we make it as a practice in the country. So all depends on which country you're talking about now. So that's why you know that this one is exactly same as what we discussed in your second portion. We talk about the principle based and the rule based. And remember, for those that follow as a rule based, in simple means that they treat it as a law, as a rule. It's a must for them to follow. But for those countries, they treat it as principle based only. So in simple means that it's just an advice. So this is exactly same as what we cover in the second portion, chapter 1, part 2. So you just carry on your readings here. And the last part of the notes here, I prepare another summary to all of you on about the history of the corporate governance. The history here, remember the history here, don't go and memorize the history. NCCA won't test you for history. But a lot of students will ask me why, then what is the purpose you put in all this history here in the notes? It's just like some of the students, they don't like to be like hanging there. So they want to know a little bit on the background of corporate governance. Where is the corporate governance come from? And then where is the theory come from? Then you can try to read through here. But actually, this part here is just purely for your understanding on the topic. It won't test you in the exam. And some more, in the summary here, I still highlight to you on why recently corporate governance because previously if we talk about like 1980s, 1970s, a lot of accountants or people out there, they can't see the needs on why we need to put in our effort for corporate governance. For them, it's just wasting time, wasting money only. So in the history part, I did highlight on why recently in the 20th centuries, this corporate governance now become a common topic, a common discussions for all the professional body. It's actually not only for accounting's industry. Even for for example, if you have any friends currently in degree for law, I'm sure that if you ask them, corporate governance is one of the major topics they need to cover in the law degree as well. So try your best to get some knowledge about corporate governance. And for those you plan to go for auditing in your optional paper, I'm sure that this can give you a very strong and solid foundations for you to bring over, carry to your auditing paper. You're going to see this again. Okay, so that's all for my chapter 1 part 3 here. Finally, we have done with chapter 1. Feel happy, right? Finally, chapter 1 done. So next video, I'll move on to chapter 2. See you in the live sessions. Bye.